ladies and gentlemen, Rodney. Yeah, I saw that picture of Eric Greitens with Vice President Pence.
Yeah, I mean, he's actually, I know all of the oxygen is being sucked up in the media by President Trump and his activity, but I will tell you there's another force that's doing what they promised to do, and that's the Jefferson City crowd. Jamie, the pace that is moving in D.C. is not unlike the pace that is moving in Jefferson City on some of the policy initiatives that are making their way. As we enter now, roughly the third week of session, we have seen more substantive policy movement cross-chamber than I think I remember, maybe even ever, since I've been around almost 15 years. Today, the House will convene hearings, Jamie, on the Senate's recently passed right-to-work legislation, and there is some really good speculation that the right-to-work bills could be on Governor Greitens' desk by Friday. That is not only unprecedented and historic, but it is very telling that people in this era of political office are going to do the things they said they were going to do, and they're going to do them pretty swiftly.
Yeah. So I also hear, though, that there's going to be a tax reform might, in fact, indeed be covered. You didn't think maybe it was going to actually be covered this session, but there's a good chance I'm hearing from Tim Jones and others that it might actually be addressed this session.
Well, I will tell you there is a move and a desire amongst a lot of the conservative members of the legislature to move on tax reform. The only caution that I'm hearing out of the executive branch is it needs to be aligned with the budget challenges that this governor is facing. So, no, there's a lot of heat and passion around it, and it's not new. I mean, there are folks up there. Even Eric Schmidt, when he passed his tax reform bill, was in good company with the numbers that are still there. So there is an appetite for some significant tax reform. I mean, Senator Ivor has talked about this. He's a pretty big force on this issue. So there are a lot of people that definitely want to move on tax reform. I think what I'm hearing out of the Greitens administration, that people around him, is they're trying to get their arms around what that would mean for the budget in light of the shortfalls that he inherited and the cuts and withholds that he has already issued last week. So tax reform, a big issue, important, especially as we approach April 15th. It's on the minds of almost everybody who pays taxes. It's something that I think people definitely want to see a move on and they'll work on. Question that I'm waiting to get some more insight from is how that will be received by the governor. I know where he is on right to work, as I just pointed out. I think he'll sign something very soon. Fastest movement of this type of legislation I think I've ever seen in Missouri. Today, the House is going to pick up a series of the tort reform bills. I mean, Jamie, these are things that were talked about in Missouri for a decade, half a decade, some starts and stops. Things got passed, couldn't ultimately get signed. That era is behind us. It's just like in D.C. No one has seen, wherever you fall on the efforts and the work no one has seen Washington, D.C., executive branch, move this fast, this swiftly, this substantively that I can remember. You have to go back maybe post World War II to see this kind of action and movement, substantive on policy, and it's I think it's dizzying for a lot of people in the press. I think to a lot of people in the public, they finally feel like they're getting what they voted for. But a lot of people have never seen this pace, and it is dizzying. And you have to pay attention. There's something of note happening every day that it matters.
What was Governor Greitens doing in D.C., and does every newly elected governor kind of do that little meeting, or what was Governor Greitens doing there?
I don't know the full agenda. There's a bunch of stuff out there that he was out there for this or for that. But I will tell you that Missouri, as we saw with the inauguration, and this particular administration has a very strong tie. In the picture he posted, he counted Mike Pence as a friend, which is not a bad thing for the state of Missouri. But also, our senator, U.S. Senator, organized the inaugural event. Missouri is one of those states that we send a lot of money, as you and I know, in terms of our state tax dollars up to the federal abyss in D.C., and we don't often get back what we should. We get back less than I think what we're entitled to. So I think part of what he was doing was probably something that was maybe political, but he also was wise enough to tie a lot of his time, or some of his time, to an administration that says that they want to restore more integrity to the states and give back to the states more of what the states are sending up to D.C. So kudos to him for not just going up for some stuff that he's off the grid, but for saying to Vice President Pence, let's talk about how this administration is going to restore resources that we send up from Missouri back to Missouri for infrastructure, roads, bridges, and some of the other things. I think there's an alignment there that will serve the state of Missouri well.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm glad to see it happening. All right, so now what is the situation with tort reform? I know that's been talked about. Is that happening?
Yeah, it is beginning today. Today at 1 o'clock, there are 5 substantive tort reform bills that touch on everything from establishing lines of demarcation for liability, venue where you can be sued, who can sue, the amount. All those issues are separate bills, tort reform bills. For your listeners who care, they're going to start hearing these bills, a lot of them in the House today at 1 o'clock, and people can tune in and listen and give an ear. And people can start to follow. I mean, this is not some secret thing that's happening off in a dark corner. This is happening at the People's House in Jeff City, and your listeners who care or want to know more or just want to be informed can follow the tort reform bills. There are about 5 of them I know being heard today.
Yeah.
And I think this is a session where you and I talked about before. People ought to stay tuned in, stay plugged in. A lot of people voted on November the 8th. Track and see what the folks who voted for. What are they doing? What are they working on?
Yeah.
How are they using the representative time that you sent them to work?
All right. Well, yeah. I mean, all the things you listed, I'm trying to figure out what does the government have to do with who can sue and who can't sue. But that's something probably that people ought to be thinking about too, because I'm not sold on tort reform being truly a conservative approach. But we'll talk about it down the line there, Rod the Bod, at Rodney Boyd. Thanks a ton, buddy, and thanks for hanging out in Jeff City on our behalf.